Thursday, 8 o'clock. It's his home. It's our home. It's your home. Sam Amick from The Athletic, kind enough to join us this morning. Sam, how are you?
Good morning, the two J's. What's up, gentlemen?
We are doing well, Sam. I hope all is well in your world. And the Kings last night, tough one in Milwaukee. So the Beam gets a hiatus, I guess, for a night. I know. We like the Beam. You writing about the Beam anytime soon, Sam?
Not writing about it. It's funny you ask, Mr. Ross. We have our weekly podcast that we record on Mondays. We do have some plans of a Beam-related segment on Monday. You know, I'm trying to put my radio hat on and actually plan out the pod. So look forward to that. I would be more than happy, or I guess, kind of relieved if, the Kings could light the Beam one more time before then to keep the topic alive. But listen, they've been playing well enough, even with, the realities of the NBA that they're a good team. You know what I mean? Like, they compete. Last night I was watching that game close in Milwaukee, and it's a really good team. They didn't let go of the rope. They just don't have the star power or the talent that the Bucks have. So they're still doing good things, but folks are going to be waiting for the Beam to light up.
Sam Amick joining us this morning from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Sam, me and Jason were discussing during the break and hoping you can give us some insight on this, kind of a two-part question. Where are we when it comes to being able to trade players? I know we're kind of getting to that point where you can trade guys that were signed during the offseason. And two, on top of that, what's kind of the early trade scuttle that you're hearing throughout the league?
So December 15th is the date where most of the contracts that got signed in the previous offseason are tradable. And so you basically, if you're playing a game of cards and in poker, and all of a sudden you got a lot more cards in the deck. That's the best way I can put it. So that changes things from a front office standpoint, where you might be looking at, I'm just kind of picking a number, but 30% more scenarios to discuss with other teams. There's also another kind of relevant date, which is, I believe, this weekend, that teams can aggregate players. And that one I'm not as crystal clear on, I should be. But bottom line, the rules are changing the next couple of weeks. Scenarios are opening up, and that's going to increase chatter. What am I hearing at this point? It's a lot of, one of our guys wrote about the Knicks the other day and how they're looking for stuff around the edges. No big stuff. We reported on the Hawks recently, and John Collins, a name we've heard forever. So the possibilities are endless for the Kings' purposes. I just think it's interesting to watch, how they manage their roster. If you went into the season talking about it, Harrison Barnes and his expiring contract would probably be the first place you look, but now he's been a pretty important piece of what they're doing. So, I'm really curious to see what they do heading into the deadline.
Yeah, and on their front, they have two veteran big men that could help a lot of teams, and the way they've elected to play this year, they've opted to play Sabonis and then small. They don't really go to Alex Len or Rashawn Holmes. I don't know exactly what those two guys could fetch, but could you envision, Sam, those guys come soon, or even trade deadline potentially being on the move?
Certainly they could be on the move. I don't know, with all due respect to them, how much they would fetch, because to me, Holmes, he's got a big enough contract that's an investment for whatever team would be trying to get him. And it doesn't help that you haven't been able to see really kind of the state of his game. And then with Len, I just think, it's his size and some of the stuff he can do is valuable, but it's not, there's a fairly long list of guys in the league that can provide that service. So I don't, if I had to guess, I think they're going to be looking for some athletic wings and more defensive presence. I don't know what that looks like or how they get that done, but I don't think they have a ton to offer, if I'm being honest, because they seem to like their team.
Sam Amick joining us this morning. Sam, after the Suns lost last night, the Pelicans moved into first place in the West in 16-8. How real are the Pelicans?
It's funny, and this is like as a quick commentary to that question today, is like basketball always fascinates me as a sport from the standpoint of the team game aspect of it. The Pelicans, what they have yet to really figure out is when they are fully healthy, how real are they? How good can they be? Because right now with Brandon Ingram out, you're seeing Zion Williamson play like the guy that we knew he could be. And you kind of look at that and say, well, all right, they're a pretty good team with Ingram out. I mean, they had a game recently with no Ingram, no McCollum. Zion was really good. They win the game. But from a functionality standpoint, they are still working out their chemistry when they are fully healthy. And I don't know what I think of that team, because Zion, had some games early on that, he wasn't really able to. So, I think that's the thing they got to figure out.
Sam, as far as some of the other teams in the West, I know you're closely follow the Warriors too. They had a really painful loss last night after they were playing a little bit better. So they're 13-13. It's just they have the look of a team that's just trying to get through the regular season, knowing what their past postseason success has been. I wouldn't say they're broken, but they also don't look like the champs. What do you think's going on with the Warriors?
I think they're going to be okay. I watched that game last night. They got no Steph, no Draymond, no Andrew Wiggins, and that matters quite a bit. Jordan Poole, I was actually kind of doing the math. Like, he takes 23 shots, I think, maybe 25, and has like 13 to the line. So Jordan Poole was chucking that thing. He's like the guy that it was like, man, the substitute teacher's here. I'm gonna act out, because Steph Curry's gone. I think they're gonna be okay though. It's still weird. They figured out their second unit to a degree because they had Draymond staggering with that group, which is something Steve Kerr did to stabilize it. I thought was super interesting and smart. And he could only really do that because Kevon Looney has gotten so good at playing with Steph Curry and almost playing that Draymond role. They dropped the game last night, but they're down three of their most important players. Generally, they're playing better. I don't know what their ceiling is, but that's kind of the story of the West. In the East, you at least know right out the gate at this point, like, all right, Milwaukee and Boston are elite, and even Cleveland's really good. They've struggled on the road, but Cleveland's really good. I don't know. The West is just crazy, you guys, because, last night's a good example. Phoenix just gets absolutely embarrassed by Boston. The night before, Phoenix loses to Dallas. I mean, we were just singing Phoenix's praises last week when I was on the show when Devin Booker went for 44 and 51 in consecutive games. So the West, and to take it back to the Warriors question, is just, dang near everybody is finding themselves still. And, I think in the end, their pedigree and the fact that we've already seen progress this season is a good sign for them.
Sam, one of those teams in the West that still seems to be finding themselves is the Timberwolves. Obviously, with the Gobert trade and all the picks they gave up, they're not going to be looking to bail on this team and tank anytime soon. However, with this core of Russell, Gobert, Edwards, and Cat not really finding a rhythm, how much leash do you think this team has with that core?
That one, to me, you're talking about Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Apologies. This is the weekly dropping the boys off at school portion where I get mildly distracted.
No worries.
The Minnesota, man, I don't know what their ceiling is. I don't know where it doesn't feel like they're going anywhere this season. I think the dynamics are super interesting. I actually read, shameless plug for our website, John Krasinski at our place had a great column talking to the Timberwolves head of their front office, Tim Conley, yesterday. And Tim tried to address some of the concerns, said all the right things, but I'm reading this thing. Perspective was good. Story was good. But man, I get in the comment section, which I don't do all that often.
Dangerous.
And I'm like, oh boy, and for anybody who doesn't know, Tim Conley was a big ticket hire coming from Denver. He ran the Nuggets front office and built the team that you're seeing in Denver now, and then got plucked by Minnesota for a big price tag. Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lore, the incoming owners, hired Tim, and so a lot of scrutiny and pressure on Tim. And this move does not appear to have been a wise one, at least to this point. So I don't know. That's really, really, really challenging because, they gave up. I keep forgetting. Is it 5? Is it 4? I think it was 4 picks. Maybe it was 5.
Yeah, I think it was 4 picks and 5 players, or 5 picks and 4 players. Either way, it was a ton.
And good players. It wasn't just
Right.
cap. So it wasn't salary fillers. It was the Jared Vanderbilts of the world, the Patrick Beverleys. So yeah, tough times in Minnesota because it's a little bit like New Orleans, right? Like now listen, New Orleans is in a much, much, much better spot. But that idea, basketball wise, that, like on those nights when Towns is out, Gobert and Anthony Edwards seem to click together fine and they'll win a game. And vice versa. If Gobert's out, Towns and Anderson Edwards rather, can do their thing. So I don't know where they're going. It's crunchy though. And it seems like there's pressure there because they gave up the farm to get Rudy, and they don't have a real future for the next few years if he's not taking them to the next level.
The last thing we got for you, Sam, kind of an offshoot of the initial thought about the trading time coming up and then the trade deadline still a few months away. There was so much thought in the offseason or coming into the season that Victor Wembanyama was that player, that guy that it would be worth, if there's such a thing as tanking to get the number one and guarantee that, it would be worth doing that this year. I don't know that that's happening now. Doesn't mean that it won't happen still to come. Do you envision some of these teams now that are at the bottom of the East or bottom of the West going, all right, if we move this player or that player, it would make it easier for us to lose more games?
Yeah, I mean, about a month ago, I did a story trying to talk to different front office folks anonymously about that, and it's funny to see how quickly that landscape has already developed, because at the time, part of the narrative was, hey, why is San Antonio winning games? That was a part of the plan. Well, I don't know what it is at this point. They've lost like 17 out of 18.
Yeah.
They've fallen off a cliff. Even Utah, it's funny, last night when they beat the Warriors, Utah at that time was on top of the West, and that was a surprise because Wembanyama would look pretty good in the Jazz uniform. But they beat the Warriors, and their owner, Ryan Smith, the game was in Salt Lake City. He's out there celebrating on the court like it's a March Madness game, and I was kind of struck by that. Like, all right, I guess those guys are actually competing, but even they've fallen off a bit. We'll see where it all goes. But yes, to your question, I just think you're going to have, fringe teams who look themselves in the mirror, realize that, they're either fighting for a play-in spot or worse, just kind of destined to be 12th in their conference. And then they say, but if we traded so-and-so for a pick or whatever it might be, then we could have a puncher's chance at getting Wembanyama, which by all accounts, obviously, he is worth losing a bunch of games for. So, I think that aspect is only going to get worse deeper in the season.
Well, Sam, we always appreciate your insight each and every Thursday. Hopefully the Kings get a win or two for you so that you can have that lead story on the beam on the podcast. We look forward to that. And Sam, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.
I appreciate you guys. Talk to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's Sam Amick from The Athletic. Check out all of Sam's great work and really everyone out at The Athletic. We got more to